All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm starting off on a blue spring, so we'll start on a light to medium spring. I also have ankle weights on, but if you don't have any, no worries. They're pretty light. They're only 1 pound, so they're not adding a ton of weight. We're going to start off with a regular lunge. So inhale, we'll bend into that standing leg, and then exhale, we'll slowly stand it back up. Your weight stays heavy in the heel of the foot that's on that box. Making sure that as you bend down into that standing leg, your knee stays right on top of that ankle. So we never want to let that knee jut over those toes. As you bend down, you want to make sure that you can still see those toes. We're pulling that core up and in. This is a pretty light spring, so we want to make sure that that core stays engaged and we're staying balanced on this reformer. We'll do a couple more here. On this next one, we're going to hold it down halfway. We're going to start to bend that carriage in on your inhale. And then on that exhale, we'll press that carriage all the way back out. You want to stay down low in that standing leg. We're just moving that carriage leg. So that standing leg stays quiet, just holding down halfway. Inhale, bending that carriage leg in. Exhale, pressing that carriage back out. From here, we'll bring that carriage in. We'll step both of those feet onto that box. We're going to switch legs. That opposite leg is going to step back onto that shoulder block. That other foot's going to stay on that box. On your inhale, we'll slowly bend down into that standing leg. We'll send that carriage leg back. We'll find the curtsy lunge. So as you're lunging down, we're making sure the knee stays tracking right in line with the toes. So we don't want to let that knee jut out too far or bring that knee in. We want to make sure that that knee stays right in line with those toes. Perfect. We'll do a few more here. Still focusing on keeping the weight in the foot that's on the box. We're staying light in the toes on that carriage. We're still pulling that belly button towards your spine, still focusing on pulling those shoulders back and down away from those ears. From here, we're going to come down halfway. On your next inhale, we'll bend that carriage leg in, and then we'll kick that carriage leg back out. So a similar movement as the one before, but this time we're in that curtsy lunge. Again, staying down really low in that standing leg, really burning out that thigh. Inhale, bending that carriage in. Exhale, pressing that carriage back out. I didn't go down as low as I feel like I could have. So if you're doing this, we're going to come down 1 inch lower, staying really down low in that lunge. From here, we're going to start to pulse that curtsy lunge up 1 inch and then back down 1 inch. So small little bends. That carriage isn't going to move too much. I had to shake out my arms a little bit. My arms were getting kind of tired. So small little movements up and then back down. Bring that carriage all the way in. We'll step both of those feet onto that box. We'll shake out those legs a little bit. From here, we're going to bring the long box onto that reformer. We're going to keep those ankle weights on if you have them on. We're going to stay on that blue spring. We're going to go into some upper body. So we're going to start out with hug the tree. Exhale, we'll bring those fingertips together. Inhale, we'll open those arms back out. As you open those arms, you want to make sure you can still see those arms in your peripheral vision. So you don't want to take those arms behind the shoulder joint ever. We want to keep this movement in front of that shoulder joint. You want to protect that shoulder. We're keeping those elbows high, right in line with those shoulders. Those wrists are right in line with those elbows. We're keeping that core engaged, so we're zipping those ribs together, kind of like you're wearing a corset. Perfect. From here, we're going to go into an overhead press. So we'll start with that hand at a cactus. Exhale, we'll reach those fingertips up overhead. And inhale, we'll bend that elbow back down into that cactus. So as you bend that arm down, we're making sure we're stopping when that elbow's right in line with the shoulder. I had to take a quick little break. It's kind of heavy on this yellow spring. So that palm stays forward. We're focusing on keeping those shoulders level. So we're trying not to lean over to one side. We're still moving with that breath. We're going to shake out those shoulders. From here, we're going to switch hands. So the hand closest to your foot bar will grab hold of that long lead. We're going to start out with an external rotation. So we'll bring that hand out to the side. We'll reach that arm up, out into a Y. We'll bend at that elbow, and then we'll bring that hand back over your belly. So we're starting with an external rotation at that shoulder, and then we're reaching that arm out to the side. If this feels like it's too much, you can always just stay with that external rotation. We're making sure those shoulders stay aligned, so again, trying not to lean over to one side. We're pulling those shoulders back and down. Sorry, I keep looking at the camera. I was afraid that my camera was going to stop recording. So we'll do a few more of these. Still focusing on moving through that breath. Staying seated up nice and tall so shoulders are right on top of those hips. We'll go for 3, 2, and last one. We'll lower that long loop down. From here, we're going to go into quadruped. So we'll come to kneeling. We'll make sure those knees are right underneath those hips and those wrists are right underneath those shoulders. We'll reach those fingertips towards the floor. Exhale, we'll sweep that hand back towards your hip. Inhale, we'll lower that hand back down towards the floor. So this is kind of like a chest expansion. We're pulling that belly button towards that spine, making sure those hips and those shoulders stay square towards that box. We're keeping those fingertips long. We're keeping the wrists strong. So trying not to bend or break at the wrist. Exhale, sweeping that hand back. Inhale, bringing that hand back down. On this next one, we'll keep that upper arm glued in next to you. We're going to bend at the elbow on your inhale. Exhale, we'll press that palm back up to the ceiling. So we're finding a tricep extension. Still keeping those shoulders and hips square. That gaze stays out and down. Still keeping that core engaged. From here, we'll take that long loop over the arch of the foot. We'll bring those hands back to that box. Those wrists are right underneath those shoulders. On your exhale, we'll kick that foot back towards the foot bar. And then inhale, we'll bend that knee back in. We're making sure the toes stay pointed down towards the floor, so we're keeping that foot parallel. Still moving with that breath. Still keeping that gaze out and down. On this next one, we're going to sweep that leg back. From here, we'll sweep that leg down towards the floor, so on the outside of that reformer, and then we'll sweep that leg back right in line with that hip. So inhale, we're sweeping that leg down towards the floor, and then exhale, we're sweeping that leg back behind you. This really gets those hamstrings and that oblique. We'll do a couple more here. And then we'll bend that knee in. We're going to move into a fire hydrant. So we'll send that knee out to the side, and then we'll bring that knee back in. So exhale as you send that knee out. Inhale as you bring that knee back underneath that hip. We're trying to keep those hips square, so if you feel those hips rolling open to the side, then we won't take that leg as high. It doesn't have to be a huge movement. We're trying not to move that carriage too much, so that carriage is staying pretty much still. It might move a little bit, but ideally that carriage stays right in next to the carriage doesn't move. We're going to go into those same movements on the other side. So we'll grab hold of that long loop with the other hand. We'll reach those fingertips down towards the floor. Exhale, we'll sweep that hand back towards the hip, and inhale, we'll lower that hand back down. Again, keeping that gaze out and down. We're keeping that chin off of your chest, pulling that belly button towards that spine. We're making sure your knees are right underneath those hips and your shoulders are right on top of the wrists. Keeping those shoulders square towards that box. And we're moving with that breath. From here, we'll sweep that hand back, we'll bend into the elbow, and then we'll straighten that hand back towards the ceiling. So exhale as you bend that arm down, and exhale as you press that hand back. So really getting those triceps here. From here, we'll slide that long loop over the arch of the other foot. We'll bring those hands back to that box. Again, wrists are right underneath those shoulders, those knees are right underneath the hips. Exhale, we'll kick that leg back, and inhale, we'll bend that knee in. Those toes stay pointed down towards the floor. We'll do 2 more here. And then on this next one, we'll kick that leg back. We're going to sweep that leg down towards the floor, and then we'll sweep that leg back right in line with that hip. So exhale as you sweep that leg up, and inhale as you sweep that leg down. We're really pulling that oblique in. So on this one, you're getting the glutes, and then you're also getting that oblique by trying to stay balanced on that reformer. We're keeping that chin off of your chest, belly button pulled in towards that spine, shoulders and hips squared towards that box. From here, we'll bend that knee back into that box. We're going to finish up with a fire hydrant. So we'll send that knee out to the side, and then we'll bring that knee back underneath that hip. Exhale, we're sending that knee out wide, and inhale, we're bringing that knee back in. Again, we're keeping those hips square, so if you feel those hips rolling open to the side, you don't have to take that leg as high. It doesn't have to be a huge movement. We're keeping that carriage still. We'll carefully slide that long loop off of your foot. We'll hang that long loop back up. We're going to go into those same arm movements facing the other way. So we'll start off with hug the tree. We'll bring those elbows out wide. We have a micro bend at the elbow. Exhale, we'll draw those fingertips together like you're hugging a tree. And then inhale, we'll open those arms back out. Again, as you open those arms out, you want to make sure you can still see those arms in your peripheral vision. You never want to take the arms behind the shoulder joint in this movement. We're feeling this in the front of the chest, still pulling those shoulders back and down. We're keeping that core engaged, zipping those ribs together. From here, we'll move into that overhead press. So we'll start with that elbow bent in at 90 degrees. That elbow's right in line with that shoulder. Exhale, we'll reach that arm up to the ceiling, and inhale, we'll bend that elbow back down. As you bend that elbow down, we're stopping when the elbow's right in line with that shoulder. We're keeping that palm facing the front, so facing right in front of you. We're keeping those shoulders right in line, so you don't want to lean over to one side. If this gets too heavy, you can always drop down to a lighter spring. We're going to switch hands. We're going to go into that external rotation with that arm extension. So that arm starts over the belly. We'll bring that arm out, and then we'll straighten that arm out. From here, we'll lower that arm down. We're going to hang up that long loop. You can shake out those shoulders a little bit. From here, we're going to hop off of that box. We'll place the long box on the other side of that reformer. We're going to go into those lunges on the other side. So we'll come to standing on that box. We'll face the foot bar. The foot closest to that reformer will be pressed up against that shoulder block. On your inhale, we'll bend into that standing leg, and exhale, we'll slowly stand it back up. Again, making sure that as you bend down, that knee stays right on top of that ankle. We also want to make sure that as you lunge down, you can still see those toes. Again, pulling that belly button up and in. We're keeping that core engaged here. This is a light spring, so we want to stay balanced. On this next one, we'll lower down halfway. Inhale, we'll bend that carriage leg in, and exhale, we'll kick that carriage leg back out. We're holding a nice deep bend in that standing leg, just bending and extending that carriage leg, still pulling that belly button in. That weight stays heavy in the heel that's on that box. On this next one, we'll bring that carriage in, we'll step both of those feet onto that box, we'll switch up those legs, we'll move into a curtsy lunge. So inhale, bending into that lunge, and exhale, we'll slowly stand it back up. We're making sure that knee stays right in line with those toes. If this feels like it's too much, you can always just go back into that regular lunge. From here, we'll hold it down halfway. Inhale, we'll bend that carriage leg in, and exhale, we'll kick that carriage leg back out. We're still staying low in that standing leg. We're just moving through that carriage leg. That standing leg stays quiet. From here, we'll bend that carriage leg in halfway. We'll start to pulse that lunge up 1 inch and back down 1 inch. So both of those legs are bent in halfway. Just little pulses, really burning out that thigh. From here, we'll bring that carriage all the way in. We'll shake out those legs. We'll hop off of that box. We're gonna place your short box on. So that short box gets placed all the way up against those shoulder blocks. From here, I lift the foot bar back up. I'm gonna use it later on. So if your foot bar is down, I'll lift that foot bar back up. We're gonna pop on a red spring. We're going to start kneeling on that carriage. Your toes are on the platform. We'll bring those forearms to that box. On your exhale, we'll press that carriage all the way out. From here, we'll saw at the elbows. So we'll press that box away, and then we'll draw that box back in. So we're pressing those elbows out, and then we're bringing those elbows right back underneath those shoulders. Your gaze stays out and down. We're tucking that pelvis, flexing those quads, pulling those kneecaps up. We'll bring those elbows right underneath those shoulders. On your inhale, we'll bend those knees right underneath those hips. And then on that exhale, we'll press that carriage all the way back out. So just bending and extending at the knees. As you bend that carriage in, you want to make sure those hips stay right in line with those shoulders. We don't want to let those hips lift up or drop down as you bend those knees in. Inhale, bending that carriage in. Exhale, pressing that carriage all the way back out. We'll bring that carriage all the way in. We're gonna stay in this same setup. We're gonna bring one foot to that foot bar. We'll start with that foot parallel, so the toes are gonna face down. Exhale, we'll kick that carriage out, and inhale, we'll slowly bend it back in. So as you kick that carriage out, we don't wanna lock out that knee. So we're pressing that carriage out about 98%, and then we're slowly bending it back in. We still wanna keep those hips square to that box. And we're making sure that that knee that's on the carriage, we want to make sure that knee's right underneath the hip. From here, we'll bring that carriage in halfway. We're going to start to pulse that carriage out 1 inch and then back in 1 inch. So small little bends, we're moving really slowly. So we're pulsing out, we're holding, we're bending back in, and we're holding. So small little bends, we don't want to rush through this. The slower, the better. From here, we'll press that carriage all the way out, flushing out that leg, and we'll bring that carriage all the way back in. From here, we're going to go into an external rotation. So the toes and the knees are going to point outwards. Exhale, we'll press that carriage out about 98%, and inhale, we'll slowly bend it back in. It's okay on this one for your hips to not be square towards that box. I let my hips roll open, and then I also tuned up the hand placements a little bit because we've been on our elbows for a while. So again, exhale, pressing that carriage out about 98%, and then inhale, we'll slowly bend it back in. On this next one, we'll bring that carriage in halfway. We'll start to pulse that carriage out an inch and then back in an inch. So small little presses. We're moving slowly, pressing out, holding, and then bending back in and holding, really driving through that heel. And then from here, we'll press that carriage all the way out. We'll flush out that leg. We're going to bring that leg back down towards that carriage. We're going to go into the other side. So we'll start with that foot parallel. So that heel's on that foot bar. Your toes are pointed down towards the floor. Exhale, we'll kick that carriage out. And inhale, we'll slowly drag it back in. We're keeping the shoulders and the hips square towards the box on this one. Your gaze stays out and down and keeping that chin off of your chest. Pressing that carriage out only about 98%, and then we're slowly dragging that carriage back in. We're driving through that heel, still moving with that breath, so you're going to move slowly. On this next one, we'll bring that carriage in halfway. We're going to start to pulse that bend and extend. So small little bends out an inch and then back in an inch. Perfect. We're moving slowly, pulsing out, holding, and then bending back in and holding. We'll flush that leg out, we'll press that carriage all the way out, and we'll slowly bend it all the way back in. We'll move into that external rotation, so the toes will point out and that knee will point out. On your exhale, we'll press that carriage out, we'll drive through that heel. And inhale, we'll slowly bend it back in. Again, making sure that your knees stay right in line with the toes. So you don't want to let those toes point out further than your knee. Otherwise, you're kind of twerking that knee a little bit, and that's never fun. It will hurt a little later. On this next one, we'll bend it in halfway. We'll finish up with those little pulses. So pulsing out an inch, and then bending it back in an inch. We'll press that carriage all the way out, and then we'll slowly bend that carriage back in. From here, we're going to come to seated on that box. We'll face the foot bar. So we're seated on that box facing the foot bar. We're going to stay on that one red spring, so that one medium spring. We're going to bring those hands into those short loops. We'll start with those hands flipped up towards the ceiling. On your exhale, we'll reach those arms out and to serve the tray. We'll open those arms out to a V, then we'll bring those hands back in front of those shoulders. We'll bend those elbows back down. So you're going into serve the tray and then offering. So as you bend those elbows down, we want to make sure that we're stopping when the elbows are right underneath those shoulders. So this movement stays in front of that shoulder joint. We never want to take those elbows behind the shoulders. We're pulling those shoulders back and down. We're relaxing through the neck and the jaw. We're making sure those shoulders are stacked right on top of those hips. And we're zipping those ribs together like you're wearing a corset. From here, your palms are going to face the box. So we'll start with those hands framing the knees. Your palms are facing the box. On your exhale, we'll lift those hands up to shoulder height, and inhale, we'll lower those arms back down. So we're going into a lateral raise. You should feel this in the fronts of those shoulders. We don't want to lift those arms higher than those shoulders. We just want to lift those hands up to shoulder height. We're keeping those fingertips long. That gaze stays forward, still pulling those shoulders back and down. This one's a little heavy on the red spring, so if you're not already there, you can drop down to those longer loops. If it still feels like it's too heavy, you can always drop down to that lighter spring. From here, we're going to hinge forward at the hip, so pitching that chest forward. We're going to bring the first finger and your thumb to a triangle. Your biceps are high in line with those ears. On that exhale, we'll straighten those arms out, feeling those triceps, and then inhale, we'll bend at the elbow. We'll bring those hands behind your head. So really squeezing those triceps as you press those arms straight. We're feeling the backs of the arms on this one still staying hinged forward, so pitching that chest forward towards the springs. From here, we're gonna hang up those long loops. We're gonna place that box to the side. We're done with it for the day. We're gonna pop on a blue spring along with that red spring. So we're on one red, one blue. We'll lie all the way down on that reformer. Your headrest can be up or it can stay down, whatever feels best for you. We're going to grab hold of those short loops. So your short loops come into your hands. We're going to reach those fingertips up to the ceiling. We'll hover those legs up to tabletop. On that exhale, we'll press those hands all the way down by your sides. And then on that inhale, we'll slowly reach those hands back up to the ceiling. As you reach those arms up, we're making sure we're stopping when your wrists are right on top of those shoulders. From here, if you'd like to progress, you can add any chest lift as you press those hands down. And if you'd like to progress further, you can send those legs out to 45 degrees. We're pulling that belly button towards your spine, still moving with that breath. On this next one, we'll press those hands all the way down. We're going to start to flutter kick those legs. So one leg lifts up and then we'll lower it back down. So these are quick. We'll bend those elbows. We'll let those feet find that foot bar. We'll take a quick little break. We'll catch that breath. And when you're ready, we'll reach those fingertips back up to the ceiling. We'll hover those legs up to tabletop. On your exhale, your right hand will go in between your knees. Your left hand will go on the outside of that left thigh. We'll come up to a crunch. If you'd like to progress, that leg that you're framing will reach out to 45. So we're moving with that breath, coming up to a bow as we reach those hands down towards that foot bar. From here, we're going to start to pulse those fingertips towards that foot bar. We'll reach down towards that foot bar. We'll start to lower and lift that leg that you're framing. Perfect. We'll go into that other side. So we'll bend those arms, those feet will find that foot bar. You can rock those knees side to side. We'll reach those fingertips up to the ceiling. We'll hover those legs to tabletop. We'll switch sides so one hand goes between your knees, the other hand goes on the outside of that thigh. We'll come up to a bow. That leg that you're framing with the hands will reach out to 45. We're moving with that breath. We'll press those hands down. We'll start to pulse down towards that foot bar. So little squeezes down towards that foot bar. That leg stays out at 45. From here, we'll start to lift and lower that leg. Those arms stay reaching down towards that foot bar. We're really getting that oblique on this one. We'll bend those arms, those feet will find that foot bar. From here, we're going to slide off those ankle weights. So we'll take those ankle weights off if you have them on. We'll place those ankle weights to the side. We're going to grab hold of those longer loops. We'll place those longer loops over the arches of both of your feet. We're still on that one red, one blue. We're going to start off with a hamstring stretch. So we'll reach those legs up to the ceiling. We'll grab hold of those ropes. We'll pull down on those ropes. We'll then send those legs out wide. We'll find an inner thigh stretch. We'll send those legs up to the ceiling. We'll move into some leg circles. So we're circling through those legs. As you lift those legs up to the ceiling, we'll make sure that tailbone stays glued to the mat. And then as you lower those legs down to the foot bar, we'll make sure that those legs don't lower down lower than 45. From here, we'll reverse that circle. So we'll draw circles the other way, still being mindful of keeping that tailbone on the mat. We'll bring those legs down to 45. We'll bring heels together, toes apart. We'll bend those knees into tabletop, and then we'll straighten those legs back out to 45. So we're going into a frog. We'll keep those heels glued together. We'll bend those knees in. Those knees will fall out wide. And then we'll squeeze those inner thighs together as you press those legs back out to 45. We'll move into a butterfly stretch. So we'll bring pinky toe to pinky toe. We'll let those knees fall out wide. And that's your last stretch. I hope you enjoyed.